My name is Evan Mercer, and this is my first season as a fire lookout for the U.S. Forest Service. I arrived at the San Juan Mountains post 3 days ago, and though I've only been here a short time, I already understand why the veterans say you can go a little strange up here if you're not careful. It's not just the solitude. It's the way sound and distance play tricks, how the ridgelines repeat themselves like a reflection that's almost perfect, but not quite. I graduated from Fort Lewis College in Durango last spring with a degree in environmental science. My internship supervisor helped me land this seasonal contract, and at the time, I thought it sounded ideal. 3 months alone in a cabin tower surrounded by mountains, paid to watch the horizon and report smoke. Peace, quiet, and purpose. What I didn't expect was the silence to feel so curated, as if the world here had been rearranged to keep something hidden. The Larkspur Lookout Tower stands at 9,600 feet on a bald ridge between Hermosa Creek and Lime Creek. Getting here was an all-day ordeal. 4 hours of dirt road switchbacks in a government jeep, followed by a steep half-mile hike to the tower with my gear lashed to a sled. When I finally reached the clearing, I found the structure in surprisingly good shape for something built in 1968. A square cabin atop a steel frame, windows on all sides, a narrow spiral stair that swayed in the wind. The radio equipment and alidade were functional. The previous lookout had left a small binder labeled Larkspur Log. Inside were daily entries written in tidy block letters. The last one was dated October 14, 2018, 6 years ago. The entry read, "Snow expected tonight. Winds rising from the west. Heard voices down by Lime Creek again, same as last week. Not sure if hunters. We'll check tomorrow if weather allows." There were no entries after that. When I asked my supervisor, Ranger Holly, about it over the radio, she said the station had been inactive since the fire season after that. Funding cuts, she explained. They only reopened it this year because the droughts got everyone nervous again. You'll be fine up there, Mercer. Just follow protocol. Protocol meant keeping hourly watch during daylight, logging visibility conditions, and reporting any smoke columns immediately. Nights were my own, though they warned me to avoid hiking after dark and to secure the hatch against high winds. I thought that part was common sense. The wind up here hits like a living thing. It hums through the frame of the tower and makes the glass vibrate until it feels like the whole room's breathing. On my first night, I set up my sleeping bag in the corner by the cot and unpacked the essentials: a portable stove, my field journal, a few books, and the hand radio. Around midnight, I woke to what I thought was a knock. 3 dull taps against the metal hatch below. I told myself it was probably the wind shifting debris against the stairs. Still, I got up, grabbed my flashlight, and looked through the floor grate that overlooked the spiral steps. Nothing but darkness. I wrote it off as nerves. Everyone warns you about tower brain, the way isolation can magnify small noises until they sound intentional. But the next morning, while making coffee, I noticed something strange outside. Just east of the tower, at the edge of the clearing, someone had built a stack of stones, waist high, neatly balanced. I hadn't seen it the day before. The cairn looked deliberate, too clean for an accident. No boot prints surrounded it, just flattened grass where someone had stood. I noted it in the logbook, figuring it might be a marker left by a hiker. The only problem was, there are no maintained trails within 5 miles of Larkspur. I radioed Holly again that afternoon to check in. She asked about visibility. I told her clear skies, 10 miles east, low wind. I almost mentioned the cairn but hesitated. I didn't want to sound paranoid 3 days into my assignment. By the 3rd day, the isolation began to settle differently. The air here has a kind of hollow quality, like everything's been drained of background noise. I'd hear my own voice echo when I spoke into the log recorder, even though the tower's small enough that should be impossible. Once, when I stepped outside to stretch, I caught a faint whistle carried on the wind. A 2-note rise and fall, rhythmic, almost human. It faded the moment I turned my head. That night, I decided to reread the old log entries. The previous lookout, whoever they were, had written in clipped, factual language until the final week. Then the tone shifted. Saw reflection of tower light across the valley tonight. Confirmed no other lookouts active within 20 miles. Thought maybe plane at first. No sound. 2 entries later. Found small cairn near south steps. Rebuilt it after it fell. Next morning it was standing again untouched. The handwriting grew shakier near the end. The last line before the final entry was almost illegible, smudged by water or sweat. I could only make out fragments. Voices in drainpipe, someone calling name that isn't mine. I tried sleeping after that, but the thought of that cairn kept me awake. At around 2 a.m., the wind kicked up, rattling the windows so hard the frames moaned. I went to the hatch to make sure it was latched, and stopped cold. The stone cairn was gone. Where it had stood that morning was just bare grass, glinting in the moonlight. I scanned the clearing, sweeping the flashlight across the slope. Then the beam caught something low near the tree line. Another cairn, smaller, hidden behind a stump. It looked like it had been rebuilt closer. I felt that stupid shiver people describe in ghost stories, the kind that starts in your gut and climbs up the spine before your brain even catches up. I shut the hatch and forced myself to sit back down, repeating what Hallie had said: follow protocol, don't dramatize. The wind could have knocked the stones over. An animal could have disturbed them. Nothing supernatural about balance and gravity. Still, when I tried to sleep again, I kept hearing faint tapping, like pebbles tossed against the metal frame. I counted 30, 8 taps before they stopped. Morning brought sun and calm skies. The cairn was still there by the tree line. Nothing else seemed disturbed. I told myself it must have been fatigue or some mountain rodent pushing stones around. I logged one explained wind movement, because writing it down that way felt less absurd. Around noon, I scanned the horizon with the binoculars. Everything looked as it should. Green ridges, low haze, no smoke. But as I panned south across Lime Creek Basin, something flickered in the lens. A light, faint but steady, flashing once every few seconds. It was too white to be a campfire and too rhythmic to be sunlight off water. There shouldn't be anyone out there. I checked the map. No roads. No private cabins, no mining sites. I adjusted the focus and waited for the flash again. There it was, a pinpoint glint, like glass catching light, maybe a mirror. The angle was wrong for reflection, though. It almost looked like it was signaling. I logged the coordinates and radioed them in. Hallie said she'd check with search and rescue. Maybe a lost hiker using a mirror for help. I wanted to believe that. But as dusk came and the ridges turned purple, I noticed something else. The flash pattern had changed. It wasn't steady anymore. It blinked in groups of 3. Pause. Then 2. Then 1, like counting down. I watched until dark. The light stopped completely once the stars came out. Now it's past midnight again and I'm sitting by the radio, waiting for sleep that won't come. The wind's calmer tonight, but I keep hearing a low vibration in the metal frame beneath my feet, like someone humming through the steel. I went down earlier to check the base of the tower, half expecting to find the stones again, maybe another cairn or some prank left by hikers. There was nothing, just the dark slope falling away and the rust smell of the stairs. But as I climbed back up, I felt this slow pull to look over my shoulder. I didn't want to, but did. Halfway down the slope, right where the tree line begins, I saw what looked like a light moving between the trunks. It wasn't a flashlight beam. It was softer, steadier, almost floating. The same pale white as the flash from earlier, only this time it wasn't blinking. It just moved, slow, deliberate, weaving through the trees as if it knew exactly where I was. When I tried to raise my radio, there was static. The hum in the tower grew louder, rising through the metal until my teeth buzzed. I switched frequencies, tried again. Nothing but white noise. The light drifted closer, then faded behind the ridge. It's quiet now. Too quiet. The hum's gone, but I can still feel it somewhere in the floorboards. I should try to sleep, but I can't shake the feeling that something's shifted. That the valley's holding its breath, waiting for me to look away first. Tomorrow, I'll check that slope at first light. I'll tell myself it was an atmospheric reflection, or some prospector's gear left behind. But deep down, I already know what I'll find. Because when I closed the hatch just now, I noticed something I swear wasn't there before. Right beside the steps, pressed into the soft dirt. A small pile of stones, barely a foot tall, perfectly balanced. And on the topmost stone, carved so faintly I had to touch it to be sure, 3 letters, EM. By dawn, the air felt thin enough to taste. I hadn't slept. The sunrise came slow and muted, the light bleeding through fog that had crept up overnight. From the tower's eastern window, I could barely see 50 yards down the ridge. The cairn near the steps was still there, stones slick with dew, my initials carved into the top one just as I'd seen before. I kept waiting for it to look different in daylight. Smaller, harmless, a trick of exhaustion. It didn't. The letters were cleanly etched, too precise for erosion or coincidence. I made coffee strong enough to burn my tongue and tried to write in the logbook, but my hand shook. I ended up with a sentence that looked like a lie: no unusual activity during the night. I told myself the rule here wasn't truth, it was routine. Routine keeps you sane. At 7:00 a.m., I radioed headquarters. The line crackled, then cleared. Ranger Halley's voice came through, bright as always, too cheerful for the static between us. Morning, Mercer. Any smoke? None. Visibility's low. Fog rolling in from the east. Good, stay sharp. The San Juans like to surprise us this time of year. I hesitated. Halley, you ever notice cairns around this area? Stone piles like markers. There was a pause. Old miners used to stack them for trail directions. But there aren't any claims near your post. Why? I glanced out the window again, just curious. She laughed lightly. You'll start naming squirrels next. Get some breakfast, Mercer. The radio clicked off. The sound of her voice faded, but it left a kind of echo in the room, as if the air had recorded her tone and kept replaying it under its breath. I packed a small bag, compass, radio, notebook, and descended the spiral stair. The metal was cold enough to numb my fingers. The cairn sat at the bottom of the steps, perfectly balanced despite the night wind. I crouched to inspect it. The carving on the top stone was shallow but deliberate, the letters straight and evenly spaced EM. It looked fresh. I brushed my thumb over it and felt grit stick to my skin, as if the dust hadn't settled yet. Someone had carved it within hours. I told myself to stay logical. No footprints doesn't mean no person. The ground up here is rocky, prints don't hold well. Maybe someone from the trail maintenance crew passed through before I arrived and left these as waypoints. That reasoning made it easier to breathe, though not by much. The fog thickened as I walked toward the tree line. Every step felt muted, swallowed before it could echo. About 30 yards from the tower, the grass gave way to pine needles. The cairn I'd seen the night before, the smaller one at the edge of the clearing, was gone now. In its place, the earth was smooth, as if something had pressed down flat and then lifted away clean. The forest swallowed the light after that. The pines grew close enough that branches knitted overhead, dripping with moisture. Somewhere distant, I thought I heard water. Maybe Lime Creek, maybe just wind through the ravine. I followed the faint slope downward, marking my path on the map as I went. After 15 minutes, I reached a narrow gully lined with moss-covered rocks. The sound of water was clearer now, a steady trickle beneath the earth. When I crouched to listen, it seemed to pulse in rhythm, like a heartbeat under the soil. That's when I saw another cairn, half collapsed, tucked against the base of a tree. 3 stones this time. The top one was darker, almost black, and glistened like it had been wet recently. I turned it over. The underside was coated in fine gray ash. I didn't touch it again. I backed away, marking the spot on my map. When I returned to the clearing, the fog had begun to lift. Sunlight cut through in sharp beams, hitting the tower's steel frame so it gleamed white. From that distance, the structure looked alien, a cage on spindly legs out of place among trees. I climbed back up, wrote my report, and made another radio call at noon. No response this time, just static that rose and fell like someone breathing too close to the microphone. I tried twice more before giving up. I spent the afternoon scanning the horizon. No smoke, no movement. But I couldn't shake the sense that I was being watched from below. Every time I turned from the window, the reflection of my own face in the glass looked slightly delayed, like it lingered a moment longer than it should. At 5:00 p.m., the fog cleared completely. From the north window, I could see miles of ridges fading blue into distance. It should have been comforting. Instead, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Down in the valley, at the exact coordinates where I'd seen the flashing light the night before, a new reflection appeared, a perfect white point, steady and still. I grabbed my binoculars. This time it wasn't flashing, it was glowing. The light didn't move, didn't behave like glass or metal. It just sat in the hollow, bright enough to hold shape even in daylight. I tried radioing again, but the static cut in hard, sharp enough that it hurt to listen. The pattern almost sounded like speech, a faint murmur that repeated Mercer, Mercer, Mercer. I turned the dial off. The hum in the tower came back, faint at first, then rising until I could feel it in my chest. I left the binoculars on the sill and stepped outside, desperate for open air. The world was completely still. Even the wind had stopped. The silence pressed so tight it felt physical, like being underwater. I looked down toward the slope and saw movement, not an animal, not quite human. Just a figure standing halfway between the tower and the tree line. They wore what looked like a ranger's uniform, the khaki blending into the grass, but the stance was wrong, too rigid, like someone holding their breath. "Hey," I shouted. My voice cracked, vanishing into the air. No response. I started down the stairs, gripping the railing to keep steady. Halfway down, I looked again. The figure was gone. I reached the clearing and turned in a full circle. Nothing but pines and distance. Then, from behind me, I heard the faint scrape of stone on metal, the sound of something sliding against the tower's base. When I turned, there was another cairn. It hadn't been there seconds ago. This one was small, 3 stones again, stacked directly against the bottom step, and in the middle stone, pressed into the surface like a thumbprint, was a faint red smear. I backed away slowly. My heartbeat was so loud it filled my ears. I wanted to run, to climb back into the tower, but my legs wouldn't decide which direction was safer. Instead, I circled the cairn once, keeping distance. The smear wasn't blood. At least, I told myself it wasn't. It was more like clay, dark red, fresh enough to glisten. By the time I looked up, the sun was dipping below the western ridge. Shadows stretched across the clearing like spilled ink. I climbed back into the tower before full dark. I latched the hatch, shut the windows, and sat at the desk until my hands stopped shaking. I didn't log what I'd seen. What could I write? Unknown person stacking stones. Light in valley behaving unnaturally. It would sound like hysteria. Instead, I turned on the lantern and wrote in my personal journal. Writing has always made sense of things for me. But tonight the words came out in fragments, short bursts that read like messages from someone else. The cairns move when unseen. The light knows my name. There is someone below. At 10:37 p.m. the hum returned. This time it wasn't subtle. The entire tower vibrated, windows trembling in their frames. The radio flickered on by itself, static hissing through the speaker. Beneath the static, faint and uneven, I heard a voice. "Evan, come down." My name. Plain as day. I froze. The voice wasn't Hallie's. It wasn't any voice I knew. It was deeper, slow, like someone learning to speak through water. "Come down. It's safe now." I turned the radio off. It turned itself back on. "You left something down here." That was when I heard it. The scrape again, louder this time. I grabbed the flashlight and leaned over the hatch window. At the base of the tower, just visible in the beam, was another cairn. Larger now, maybe 2 feet high, and next to it lay something dark, a shape half buried in grass. It took me a moment to realize what it was. My field notebook, the one I'd taken into the woods earlier. I hadn't dropped it. It was zipped in my pack when I returned. The voice came through the radio again, low and patient. "You forgot your notes, Evan." The hum rose until the lantern flickered out. The dark pressed in tight. For a long time I didn't move. When I finally dared to look outside again, the cairn and the notebook were both gone. Now as I write this, it's past midnight. The fog is creeping back from the valley, thick and pale under the moonlight. The hum has gone quiet, but the silence feels worse. There's weight in it, intention. I don't know if I'm staying another night. But if I leave, I'll have to go down those stairs, past where the cairns keep appearing, where that voice keeps waiting. And if I'm being honest, part of me already knows what I'll see when I reach the bottom. It won't just be another pile of stones. It'll be me, waiting there in uniform, perfectly still, holding my own notebook open to a blank page. I've been trying to convince myself that what I saw last night didn't happen. That fatigue, fog, and reflection can shape light into anything. But the San Juans don't forgive imagination. They hold it up to your face until you can't tell the difference. By morning, the fog had swallowed the ridge again. I didn't leave the tower. I couldn't. Every time I looked down through the hatch, I expected to see the cairn, or that still figure in the uniform. But there was nothing, just gray vapor drifting around the legs of the structure. At 8:12 a.m., I tried the radio. Static. At 8:15 again. Still nothing. Then, faintly, beneath the white noise, I heard a pattern. Not a voice, not words, just 3 sharp bursts of sound. Pause. 2, then 1. The same pattern as the light from the valley. I spoke into the mic anyway. Larkspur Tower to Station Hermosa. Do you copy? The response came after several seconds. Copy, station received. The voice sounded distant, warped. But it was a voice. This is Evan Mercer at Larkspur Tower. I need confirmation on search and rescue operations near Lime Creek. Any personnel in the area? Static. Then, none authorized, stay at post. The transmission broke off there. I waited, mic in hand, for another word, but the silence stretched. When I released the button, I realized something impossible. The radio wasn't plugged into the generator. I disconnected it last night when it started turning on by itself. The cord still dangled loose. I pulled the logbook toward me and started writing, but my hand kept drifting toward the window. The fog thinned in slow layers, revealing fragments of the landscape like half-remembered dreams. Boulders, pines, ridgelines fading into haze. Then I saw it again. The light, same place as before, low in the valley, brighter than morning should allow. It didn't flash now. It pulsed slow and steady, like breathing. I lifted the binoculars, but as soon as I focused, the lens fogged from inside. I wiped it, tried again. The light had multiplied. There were 3 now, evenly spaced in a straight line. The wind shifted then, carrying the faintest sound up the slope, a whistle, not tuneful, just a high, thin note that wavered once and cut off. That sound broke whatever courage I had left. I shut the shutters, bolted the hatch, and turned on the stove just to hear something mechanical. The hiss of gas steadied me for a while. By late afternoon, the fog had cleared entirely. The valley below gleamed with meltwater and sun, serene as if nothing had ever been wrong. I almost laughed. Maybe that's the danger here. Not ghosts, but pattern seeking. The human brain trying too hard to explain wilderness indifference. I told myself I'd hike down tomorrow. Just one more night. I needed to prove I could handle this. Needed to know I wasn't running from shadows and stones. As the sun set, the ridge cooled fast. Temperature drop always changes the sound of the air. It tightens it. You can hear further. At first it was just the usual creaks and snaps of the metal frame adjusting to cold. Then, beneath that, a soft tapping, not random, rhythmic, 3 knocks. Pause, 2, pause, 1. The same cadence as before. I leaned over the hatch, flashlight in hand. The beam caught the bottom platform, and something moved just out of range. A flicker, like a shadow sliding behind one of the support beams. Hello. My voice cracked. I hated how hopeful it sounded. No answer, just the wind returning, brushing against the tower's steel like fingertips. Then came the scrape. Stones again, grinding lightly. I forced myself to look. Another cairn was taking shape at the base, stone by stone stacking itself. I couldn't see the hands that moved them, but they rose one after another, impossibly steady. When it reached 5 stones high, it stopped. A pause, as though whoever, or whatever, was building it had stepped back to admire the work. I bolted upright, grabbed the radio, and switched it on. Station Hermosa, this is Mercer. Emergency transmission. I need immediate response. Static swallowed the words. Then came the hum. Low. Vibrating through the tower until the lantern swung on its hook. Evan. The voice was clearer this time. It came through the speaker, yes, but also through the walls, through the floor, through my ribs. It layered itself inside the static like breath-fogging glass. "Come down, we have your report." "I'm not coming down," I said. "Identify yourself." No reply, just a slow, dragging sound beneath the tower, metal on dirt. Then another voice, different this time, higher, trembling with panic. "Then stop!" Don't one sounded human. Familiar. I froze. "Who is this?" Static. Then silence. The radio clicked off. I stood there shaking, the lantern still swinging, shadows flickering across the walls. Finally, I climbed to the observation window and looked down. The cairn was taller now, maybe 7 stones, and a shape stood beside it. A person facing away, head tilted up toward me. The uniform looked almost identical to mine, except the color was darker, soaked through like it had been in rain. The figure didn't move. I shouted again.
"Identify yourself."
They turned then, slowly, as if unsure how to use their body. The face that looked up wasn't one I recognized, not entirely. But it looked near enough to look like me. The same jaw, the same hair falling over the forehead, but pale, the features softened, as if carved from stone. I stumbled backward, hit the desk. The radio switched on by itself again. The voice steady now. "We're waiting for you, Evan. The tower's not yours." The lantern burst and went out. I don't remember deciding to move. One moment I was frozen. The next I was halfway down the stairs, flashlight clenched in my hand. My boots hit the ground and sent dust swirling. The clearing was empty, no figure. The cairn still stood, though 8 stones now, each one damp as if pulled from the creek. I circled it, pulse hammering. The bottom stone had something carved into it. Not initials this time, but a date, October 14, 2018. The last entry in the old logbook. That was when I noticed the final stone, the newest one on top. Something was wedged beneath it. Thin, folded, weather-stained. I pulled it free. Paper. It was a page from the logbook torn at the edge. My handwriting. Dated today. The same lines I'd written that morning. No unusual activity during the night. The paper was still wet. The flashlight flickered, then died. I sprinted back up the stairs, slammed the hatch, and barricaded it with the cot. The tower swayed under sudden wind. Outside, through the glass, the light in the valley began to pulse again. 3 times, pause, 2, pause, 1. Then everything went still. The hum rose so loud the metal quivered like a drum. I pressed my hands over my ears. The sound wasn't outside anymore. It was inside my head. Then, quiet. When I dared open my eyes, the valley lights were gone. The stars had returned. But the reflection in the glass didn't match me anymore. My movements were a second behind, the expression too calm. I lifted my hand, it lifted later. When I stopped breathing, it didn't. It just smiled, my own mouth stretched too wide. I turned away and every window showed the same thing. Me, a moment delayed, always watching. Now the night has gone still again, the tower hums faintly, the kind of sound that hides beneath silence. I know I should leave, but every time I touch the hatch handle, something tugs at the edge of my thoughts, a pressure behind my eyes that whispers to stay. Outside, the fog is rolling back in. The stones will probably move again before morning, and somewhere below, in that valley where the lights were someone, maybe me, maybe what's left of him, is building another cairn for who comes next. The night hasn't moved. It feels as though the clock face above the desk froze hours ago, though I can still hear its faint tick beneath the hum, slow, off, rhythm, like a heartbeat that's forgotten how to keep time. The air inside the tower is colder now, damp enough that my breath hangs pale in the lantern glow. I keep catching glimpses of movement in the glass, but I've stopped checking. The reflections don't wait for me to turn anymore. I thought the storm had passed after the last tremor, but outside, the fog's thickened into something heavier. It's not drifting anymore, it's rising. From the valley up the slope, swallowing trees as it climbs. The moonlight hits it just right so it looks solid, like a tide made of smoke. Every instinct tells me to leave, but the stairs feel wrong. When I press my ear to the hatch, I can hear faint scratching from below. Not claws, stone against stone, deliberate and patient. It comes in bursts, scrape, pause, shift, tap. The rhythm feels like counting. I tried using the radio again an hour ago, but all I got was static and long exhale, like waves. Then, faintly, a whisper behind it, stay inside. It was my own voice. I shut it off. I can't tell what's dream and what's not anymore. I caught myself writing in the logbook without realizing it. Same entry, word for word, from the torn page I found earlier. No unusual activity during the night. When I noticed, I ripped it out, but there was another copy already there, dated 5 years ago in different handwriting. The hum builds sometimes, then drops away completely. Each time it vanishes, I think maybe it's over. Then the silence expands until I can hear the tower breathing again. It exhales through the walls, subtle but steady, as though the whole structure's alive and trying not to wake me. Around midnight, or what I think is midnight, the fog reached the platform. It moves differently up close. Not a natural roll or swirl, but a slow vertical push, like it's climbing. I can't see the ground anymore, only the faint shimmer of the steel supports fading into white. I watched for a long time, waiting for any break, any sign of light. Then, from somewhere beneath the fog, a dull glow began to form. The same pale white light I'd seen in the valley, but closer, softer, pulsing underfoot. The hum followed, deeper now, vibrating through the entire frame until dust rained from the ceiling. My reflection in the window leaned in, closer than I did, its mouth moving without sound. Then a faint voice rose through the static of the world outside. Not from the radio this time, from below the tower. "You shouldn't have come alone." Male, quiet, patient, it carried like breath through the fog. I forced myself to answer. "Who are you?" The reply came after a long pause, almost tender. "I was you." I stumbled backward, hitting the desk. The reflection behind me smiled again, calm and sure. "You left us here," it whispered, not aloud, but in my head, threading through my thoughts like a second voice using the same mouth. Every lookout leaves something behind. The fog reached the windows then, pressing against the glass so the world beyond turned milky and blind. A faint shape appeared in the whiteness, a human outline climbing the stairs. I heard each footstep vibrate through the metal. Slow, steady, deliberate, I yelled. Maybe at it, maybe at myself. "Stay back." No answer. The footsteps stopped directly beneath the hatch. Then came the first knock. 3 taps, light but exact. I grabbed the flashlight, aimed it through the grate, and froze. The figure stood just below the platform. My beam caught its face, my own blank-eyed, streaked with gray dust. It stared up for a moment, then spoke. "You wrote it wrong again." "What?" "The entry. You always do." I slammed the hatch shut, locked it, and backed into the corner. The metal vibrated once, like something heavy had brushed against it, then went still. The air in the room changed after that. It felt crowded. The reflection in the window multiplied. 2, then 3 versions of me overlapping like overexposed film. One was turned slightly toward the desk, one toward the hatch, one facing away, looking into something I couldn't see. I heard writing again, pen on paper, but my hands were empty. When I turned, the logbook lay open, pen moving across the page by itself. The letters were shaky but legible. October 14, 2018. Heard voices below. "We'll check tomorrow if weather allows." The same final entry from 6 years ago. The hum surged until the windows rattled. I tore the page out, threw it to the floor, but another began to form beneath it, ink bleeding up from the paper. Same handwriting, same words. The hatch handle started to turn. Not violently, just a slow, steady rotation, like whoever was beneath was testing it, confident I'd eventually stop resisting. Then the fog outside flared white. I ran to the north window. Shapes moved inside it, dozens of them, faint outlines circling the base of the tower. Some stood upright. Others crouched near the legs of the structure, stacking stones. One by one, the cairns began to glow from within, faint as embers. The reflections in the window turned toward me, perfectly synchronized now. All 3 smiled in the same slow motion, teeth showing in the light of the lantern. "You'll go down soon," they said together. The hum dropped to nothing. The silence afterward felt like falling. Then came the sound that nearly broke me, a single pen click from behind. I turned. The logbook sat open again, a new line appearing. This time in my handwriting. "Going to check tomorrow if weather allows." I don't remember writing it. But the pen was in my hand. Something shifted under the floor. The whole tower tilted, a groan tearing through the metal. I staggered to the window. Below, the cairns were stacked higher, reaching almost to the first platform. The fog pulsed with every vibration, like the world was breathing through it. I tried the radio once more. "Station Hermosa emergency, please respond." A static, then a voice faint but clear. Copy, Mercer. "Sit tight. Dawn's close." But dawn didn't exist here anymore. The stars hadn't moved. The fog just deepened until it became its own horizon. Another knock at the hatch. This time one single, heavy strike. The handle turned again. My reflection whispered, almost kindly, "It's only yourself. You always let yourself in." I don't know what part of me believed that, but I stepped closer. The hatch vibrated once, then stopped. I placed my hand on it, feeling the cold seep through the steel. On the other side, something pressed back. Same shape, same pressure, same fingers. Then, from the radio, faint and almost pleading, "Mercer, don't open it." Two voices now, one outside, one inside, both mine. I took my hand away. The hum flickered, guttered, then returned, now perfectly in sync with my heartbeat. The reflections in the windows began to fade, leaving only the outlines. The glass no longer showed the room. It showed the forest below, seen from some impossible angle, as if I were standing down there, looking up. In the fog, the tower appeared hollow, empty, lightless. Something inside the image moved up the stairs, lantern in hand. The glow climbed higher, each step perfectly timed with the faint creaks I heard in the real tower. I should have run then, I know that. But the rhythm had me. I found myself walking toward the hatch again, flashlight trembling in my grip. As I reached the last step, the fog pressed hard against the glass, and I realized something. There was no reflection anymore. Only the window showing the same tower from outside, where someone now stood, lantern in hand, looking up. Me, or what used to be. The hum rose once more, loud enough to drown the wind, then cut to silence like a held breath. The hatch handles stopped turning. The light below dimmed. For the first time all night, the tower went completely still. I sat down beside the hatch, listening for movement. Nothing, not even the creak of cooling metal. It might have been over, if time still meant anything here. I told myself I'd wait until dawn before doing anything else. But as I wrote that sentence down, my pen slipped. When I looked back, the words on the page weren't what I'd written. They read, "The weather allows. The night doesn't pass anymore. It just rearranges itself. Every time I blink, the shadows are in different places. The fog shifts direction. And the clock insists it's still a few minutes past 3. I've stopped trying to reason with it. The only thing that feels steady is the hum, deep in the metal bones of the tower. It's not just sound now, it's rhythm. Like breath, or a pulse I've sensed to without meaning to. The reflection is gone from the windows, at least for now. In their place is a pale glow leaking through the fog, steady and cold. I tell myself it's the moon, though it's coming from below, not above. I tried writing again earlier, to keep myself tethered. The first few sentences made sense. Then the words started copying themselves line by line as if someone else was tracing my hand. I stopped when the handwriting changed mid-word, turning neater, sharper, too familiar. The page read, "You always come back, Evan. You always stay." My throat hurts from not speaking, so I whisper sometimes just to hear something human. But even that doesn't sound right anymore. My voice lags like the echoes up here have started thinking for themselves. At some point, minutes, hours, I can't tell, I heard footsteps on the stairs again. Not climbing this time, pacing. A slow drag of boots circling the base. Every so often, the metal pinned with weight, like something brushing against the frame. I pressed my ear to the hatch and held my breath. Through the steel came a soft tap, 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 then the faint slide of paper under the door. I didn't move for a full minute. Then I crouched and looked. There it was, a sheet of lined paper folded once. I reached for it with the end of the flashlight, hooked it closer, unfolded it. My handwriting. Day 12. The tower's empty now. Still hearing myself upstairs. Don't answer when I call. I checked the logbook. There's no day 12. I've only been here 4 days. The hum deepened suddenly, vibrating the desk. The lantern flickered, then steadied into that strange colorless glow again. I turned toward the nearest window, and there I was, standing outside, looking up. No flashlight, no pack, no color to the clothes. Just that same gray version of myself, hands at my sides, face tilted toward me with a calm that felt older than the mountain. I spoke before I could stop myself. "What do you want?" The reflection. My double raised one hand and pointed toward the door. The hum cut out. Complete silence. Then, faintly through the metal, a voice come right the rest. I slammed the shutters closed one by one. Every pane I covered made the room darker, smaller, until only the desk lamp lit a narrow circle. The air felt thick, metallic. The radio hissed once and came alive. Not static this time, typing. The soft click of keys. I leaned close. The sound stopped. Then a voice, not mine, spoke through the speaker in a flat, patient tone. "Mercer, it's Holly. We got your distress ping. Sit tight. Repeat, sit tight. My heart, John Halley. You can hear me? Copy. Confirm you're still at Larkspur." "Yes. Good. We're reading your report now." That stopped me. "What report?" Static. Then her voice again, lower. "The one you left." My mouth went dry. "Halley, listen to me." I didn't. The radio squealed, cutting me off. Beneath the distortion, I heard overlapping words, my own voice layered over hers, repeating everything I'd just said seconds earlier. "Listen to me. I didn't. Listen to me. I didn't." It looped faster until it became a drone, feeding back on itself, indistinguishable from the hum of the tower. I yanked the plug, but the sound didn't stop. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. The air tasted like rain before lightning. Then, from somewhere above me, came another sound. Footsteps on the roof. Impossible. There's no way up there but through this room. Dust sifted down with each slow step. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped directly overhead. Then 3 taps against the ceiling, spaced and deliberate. The same pattern again, 3, pause, 2, 1. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" From the roof, something answered in a voice too quiet to belong to lungs. "To remember." The light dimmed until the only glow left came from the fog outside. It pulsed once, twice, then seemed to drift closer, pressing against the window glass as though trying to see in. Inside that glow, I saw outlines, figures still and upright, circling the tower. Their faces were blank, pale ovals that caught the light like whetstone. One by one, they turned upward. Every reflection in the glass turned with them, hundreds of faces that almost were mine. I backed toward the desk, keeping my eyes on the hatch. The fog pressed harder, creaking the glass. The radio clicked again, and through the layered static came a final voice. Clear, calm human. "Mercer, this is Station Hermosa. If you can hear this, you are not at Larkspur Tower. Evacuate immediately." The voice repeated twice, each time weaker. The third time, it started to sound like mine. Then the lantern went out. The glow outside burst bright, flooding the room in white so pure it erased shadows. For a moment, I thought the fog had cleared, that dawn had finally broken. But the light didn't come from the sky. It came from beneath the tower. The hum reached its peak, rattling every bolt in the frame. I clutched the desk to stay upright. Outside, the cairns blazed like phosphor, each one pulsing in rhythm with the hum. Through the blinding light, a single figure began climbing the stairs. I could only see the outline, but it moved with my gait, my hesitation, my reach for the railing. Every step it took, the tower seemed to bend closer to meet it. When it reached the hatch, the handle turned halfway, then stopped. The voice came through the steel, quiet but unmistakable. "It's your shift." Something inside me cracked then, not from fear but from recognition. It wasn't a threat. It was routine, like a handoff. I knelt by the hatch, palm against the cold metal, feeling the hum pulse through both sides. "What happens if I open it?" I whispered. Nothing new. Came the answer. A pressure built behind my eyes, like remembering too fast. I saw flashes. Other towers, other nights, other versions of myself sitting here, waiting for the same sound, writing the same lines. Always ending with the same lie. No unusual activity during the night. I pressed my forehead to the hatch and laughed once, quiet and hollow. "You're me?" Silence. Then, for now. The hum softened, almost gentle. I sat there, hands still on the metal, until my vision swam. Somewhere above, the ceiling creaked. The clock ticked. My reflection in the nearest window leaned closer, mouth moving slower than mine. When I blinked, we traded places. I was outside, looking up at the tower, watching the faint lantern glow behind the glass. Inside, the other me sat at the desk writing. His expression was calm, composed. He didn't look scared anymore. The fog swallowed the clearing completely then. I took one step toward the tower, but the ground beneath my boots crunched, not on dirt, but on small, balanced stones, a path of cairns leading outward into the dark. And behind me, from somewhere unseen, the radio voice whispered again. Steady official practiced Larkspur Tower log, October 14. Fog rising from the west. Heard voices near Lime Creek again. Not sure if hunters. We'll check tomorrow if weather allows. The hum faded with the words, leaving only stillness. I don't know whether I'm the one inside writing or the one outside watching. Maybe both. Maybe neither. The night holds patient. The fog breathes. And the tower waits. It's still the same hour. It's always the same hour. The hands on the clock keep twitching but never cross. Every sound in the tower has learned its own loop. The slow creak of the frame, the faint hiss of fog against glass, the hum that's no longer background but heartbeat. I can't tell if it belongs to the tower or to me. I haven't spoken in a while. The voice that answers doesn't need prompting anymore. When I do try to talk, it overlaps mine, saying each word a split second before I do. The lag used to be behind. Now it's ahead. The hatch hasn't moved since last time. The metal's cold, slick with condensation, breathing out slow drafts that smell like wet stone and electricity. I sit beside it, pen balanced on my knee, because the only thing that still feels like control is writing, though I'm no longer sure what ends up on the page is mine. The logbook lies open. Every time I glance away, a new line appears, written in my own hand, visibility limited, lights below, heard voice call name. The lines fade, reappear, shuffle. Sometimes the ink turns pale, like it's trying to erase itself. I whispered a question into the fog earlier. Just to see if I'd get an echo, I asked, "How many of us are there?" The answer came back too quickly, from too many directions. "All of you." The hum pulsed once, so deep I felt my ribs vibrate, and the lantern flame folded inward, shrinking until the room was almost dark. I tried to relight it, but it wouldn't catch. The wick was already burning, yet there was no light. Through the window, the fog glowed again. But it wasn't coming from below this time. It was inside the tower, a thin shimmer rising from the floorboards. The air bent with it, warping the shape of the room. My reflection in the glass leaned forward, lips moving soundlessly, then reached a hand toward me, through me. The touch was cold enough to stop my breath. I looked down, and my own fingers were already on the glass, matching the motion exactly. That's when I realized the reflection wasn't behind the window anymore. It was in front of it. It stood where I should have been, same posture, same clothes, same stillness. The only difference was the expression, peaceful, unblinking. It mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then the hum answered for it, trade places. My knees gave out. I hit the floor, back against the hatch. The steel felt warm now, like something living pressed against the other side. "Why me?" I asked, not expecting sense. The reply came in that blended tone, half radio static, half my own thought, "Because you stayed awake." I almost laughed. What happens if I don't? Then it starts again. Someone else climbs up. You become what you watch. I could see movement through the fog. Silhouettes circling the base again, their pale faces tilted upward. Each carried a lantern, and each lantern flickered with that colorless flame. The cairns beside them had doubled, stacked high enough to brush the first platform. The hum deepened. The glass quivered. Then a single knock at the hatch. Not the rhythm this time, just one, like punctuation. I pressed my palm against it and felt the same motion match from below. Perfect synchronization. For a moment, the hum quieted, and in the absence, I heard breathing slow, steady, the same as mine. I pushed my ear closer. Beneath the breath came a whisper, soft and almost kind. "You don't have to open it. You already did." The words made sense in the way dreams do, too much, all at once. My memory splintered flashes of another night, another storm, another version of me pressing against this same door. The dates blurred together in the logbook. Each page carried the same sentence, written by different hands, the ink never drying. I looked around. The tower wasn't the same shape anymore. The walls had shifted slightly off true. The desk had moved closer to the center, though I hadn't touched it. The clock had fallen silent. Something above me let out a sound. Not footsteps this time, but scraping, like metal on glass. I looked up. The ceiling had gone translucent. Behind it, faint as reflection through water, I could see another version of the room. Another me, sitting at the desk, pen moving. When he looked up, I felt my own neck turn, like we were connected by string. He smiled, then mouthed the words I'd been hearing for hours. "It's your shift." I tried to stand, but the floor felt unsteady, the hum rising through it like pulse through a vein. The air shimmered, bending the light. For a second, I saw through the walls. The mountains beyond, endless and wrong, their ridges repeating in impossible patterns, folding back into themselves like a map misprinted over time. Every peak had a tower. Every tower had a light. And in each one, someone sat watching. I stumbled to the window, pressed my face to the glass. The fog outside pulsed in rhythm with the hum. For a heartbeat, it cleared. Down below, I saw a man climbing the stairs. He wore my jacket, my pack, my gait. He looked up toward me, one hand shielding his eyes, lantern in the other. He was real. And suddenly, I understood what the voice meant. The pattern wasn't just repetition. It was replacement. One leaves, one arrives. The mountain always keeps its watch. I tried to yell, to warn him. The sound barely left my throat. The fog filled my mouth, thick and tasteless. My voice came out a second late, repeating itself from somewhere else in the room. He paused on the last step, staring at the hatch. Then he knocked. 3, pause 2, pause 1. My body moved without permission. I reached for the handle. The hum surged until it became a single continuous tone, almost beautiful in its precision. The tower vibrated, every screw singing. I saw my reflection behind the new ranger's shoulder, calm, patient, waiting. I said, "Don't open it." He looked up, confused. "Hello. You okay up there?" I said it again, louder. "Don't." But the sound lagged. The moment my words reached him, he was already turning the handle. White light filled the hatch seam, flooding the room. The hum hit a frequency that turned to silence so pure it rang in my bones. Then, stillness. I opened my eyes, or maybe he did. I was sitting at the desk again. The air smelled of dust and ozone. The fog pressed lightly against the glass, pale and patient. The logbook lay open before me, blank except for the first line, October 14, 2024. Arrived at Larkspur 10 miles, visibility 10 miles. A new voice crackled through the radio. Cheerful, distant. "Morning, Mercer. How's the first day treating you?" I looked at the hatch. Closed. Clean. No marks on the steel. The hum was gone. Only wind. I answered slowly, the words coming out practiced, familiar. "All good so far. Quiet up here." Hallie laughed softly. "Give it a few days. The silence will start talking back." I smiled at that. "Yeah," I said. "I've heard." When I hung up, the pen was already in my hand. The first entry of the new season waited. I wrote the same sentence I've written every night since time stopped moving, no unusual activity during the night. Outside, somewhere below, a faint scraping began, the sound of stones stacking one by one. The night isn't outside anymore. It's here, stretched through the floorboards, folded into the sound of my breathing. I can feel it in the steel. How it remembers shape, how it holds the weight of every lookout who's ever tried to leave. The fog presses soft against the glass, whispering in the same tone the wind used to have. Everything has taken on a voice. I don't sleep now. There's no need. The body still tries sometimes, the ghost of hunger, the twitch of fatigue, but the tower hums and it steadies me. The rhythm goes through the bones and back again. It feels like belonging. The logbook is full, though the pages never run out. The words rearrange themselves each time I look. Some are mine, some belong to others. I've learned not to tell the difference. There's comfort in that. When I was new, I thought the silence was punishment, that the mountain wanted witnesses to its stillness. But silence here isn't empty, it's crowded. You learn to listen long enough, and you can hear the echoes stacked like cairns. Every breath taken in this tower leaves a mark on the air. Every heartbeat adds a note to the hum. Sometimes, when the fog clears, I see them. Not ghosts exactly, more like impressions of light caught in the frame. Shapes moving at the edge of vision, each one turning to watch the horizon. Some wear the old uniforms, some look like me. All of them hold still, waiting for something they've already seen. I tried once to mark the time again. I drew a line across the page and wrote, "If anyone reads this, the night has not ended." But when I looked back, the words had changed. They said, "If anyone reads this, welcome to your shift." That was when I stopped fighting the pattern. I understand it now. The mountain isn't trapping us. It's preserving us. A lookout for every ridge, every generation. Someone to keep watch while the world sleeps, to remember the fires before they start. Each of us takes a turn. Each of us writes the same words until they mean something different. The cairns outside have stopped growing. There are just enough now. One for each name carved somewhere in these pages. When the fog thins, I can see faint light pulsing from within them, steady as breath. They don't mark graves. They mark continuance. I can hear Hallie's voice sometimes, carried through the radio long after it should have gone silent. Not her exactly, but the shape of her tone, the rhythm of check-ins, morning Mercer. Any smoke. It always sounds fresh, as if she's just a few ridges away. I answer out of habit. None. Visibility's low, and somewhere in the static, another voice repeats it after me, maybe one I used to be. It's quiet again now, though not still. The hum has a pulse of warmth tonight, slow and even. The fog presses close to the windows, thin enough to see outlines moving within it. New silhouettes climbing the stairs. They always come in pairs, at first the one who climbs and the one who watches. He's close now. I can see the light of his lantern brushing the fog below. The knock will come soon. 3, pause, 2, pause 1. I'll answer the same way I always do. Not with words, but with the hum shifting through the metal, letting him know the place is ready. The first time I understood this part, I thought it was cruelty, being made to hand the silence to someone else. But there's mercy in it too. It means I'm not alone anymore. None of us are. The hatch trembles once lightly. The air in the room straightens the way it does before lightning. I feel the hum align, me, the tower, the fog, the ridge. Everything sinks. He knocks. The sound is small, almost polite. For a moment, I remember the first time I heard it. The fear, the impulse to hide. It all feels far away now, softened by repetition. I rest my hand against the hatch, palm to palm with the shape beneath. The warmth matches perfectly. I whisper what I wish someone had told me. It's not the dark that stays. It's the duty. The hum answers like a heartbeat. The tower exhales. The fog slides back, slow and reverent. I see his face in the reflection, young, tired, hopeful. He'll be fine. The mountain teaches quickly. I look down at the logbook. The pen moves on its own now, neat and sure. October 14, clear skies, visibility 10 miles. The ink dries instantly, as if it's written itself 1,000 times already. When the handle turns, light pours through the seam. It's warm this time, the kind that comes before dawn but never quite arrives. I smile as the hatch opens. The hum fades and the silence fills its place. Thick, alive, infinite. If you ever find this tower, don't worry about the hour. It's always the right one when you arrive. The mountain doesn't measure time by clocks. It keeps it in echoes. And when you hear the hum through the steeple, don't be afraid. That's just us, all of us, still keeping watch.